Welcome, everyone. It's another session in the Inner Sanctum sessions. We're going galactic today. Here we go. I'm just going to press the recording button. There we are. We're recording this as well. We're going galactic today with our very special guest in the Inner Sanctum, Bridget Renee Holliday. Welcome, Bridget. So great to see you, darling.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited too. And Bridget was saying that she's been uber busy today because you've been doing what was the conference called? The Pleiadian conference with...
The Pleiadian conference with Star Codes and Portal to Ascension. I just did that one and then had a tiny little break and then hopped on with you.
There we are. Go. I'm just checking that we're live. Just checking. It seems to be a bit delayed today. No. Oh, I see live. YouTube's changed the game. There we go. Yeah, we're live. So what we're going to do is we're going to share some of your story with the people that are listening on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm on Twitter as well. And then we're going to go off the live stream and just talk to the little Zoom group and do a Q&A. But let me read to you a little bit about Bridget. Bridget Renee Holliday is a StarSeed Ascension-Contact Specialist, channel, multidimensional medium, and Galactic Unity Ambassador, holding frequencies of unity consciousness, grounding this into the human experience. Her star lineage includes Pleiadian, Sirian, Arcturian, Lyran, Andromedan, and Aurora, amongst others. We'll get into that. As an Ascension Contact Specialist, she communicates with high realms and assists others to expand and embrace these innate connections within themselves. Her mission is to include normalizing the conversations and perceptions around interdimensional, extradimensional, ultradimensional, and extraterrestrial beings. Bridget's soul work is offered through Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, Multidimensional Energy Healing, awakening, and mentoring starseeds with their ascension journey. Bridget helps you remember who you are and that you have trained lifetimes for what you are here to do on Earth at this time of shift. Absolutely, honey. She also enjoys sharing cosmic wisdom and knowledge through online speaking engagements and workshops. She is one of the Galactic Ambassadors, the Galactic Goddesses connecting hearts across the water. Yeah, that's right. We did that a few months ago, and an ambassador of the Galactic or the Wish Alliance. And your website is bridgetreneeholliday.com. So what normalizing her mission? What did I say I wanted to talk about? So how did you find out about your star lineage? Like, how did that occur?
So I've been connecting and communicating my whole life with all kinds of beings. I'm just going to move this out of my way. And there was a large group within what I call a soul team. We all have a soul team. To me, those are just the beings who are here to guide and assist us along our journey. They're parallel aspects of soul that our soul is currently expressing as, but they're also friends and family from both within and beyond the human earth experience, right? So I've been communicating with them my entire life. And there was this large group within my collective who showed themselves to me as beings of light. They had a slightly different frequency than everyone else, and that's what I knew them as. And then I had 2 contact experiences back to back over a 3-hour period in my house. And it completely shifted my reality, right? And when that happened, that large group within my collective began going, hey, this is what I look like. Like, here's my face, here's a headshot, here's my whole body, right? And what ended up happening is, the Pleiadians were the first to step forward. And they came forward, and I was already channeling. I mean, I'd been channeling most of my life. Obviously communicating and channeling is not that different, right? So they came forward and said, they said, hello, dear one, we are the Pleiadians. And they just started talking to me. And then I received my first Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis session from one of my best friends. And I experienced many of my parallel soul expressions in that first session. And one of them was Pleiadian. And then there was another one that was a Pleiadian hybrid. And they, stepped forward and showed me things and took me on journeys and all of these different amazing things that can happen in a quantum healing hypnosis session, whatever type you have, right? And then, more information just began rolling through. So when you start to access like your higher knowingness, right? When you begin to access your higher knowingness, when you begin to really embody more of your fifth dimensional and above frequencies, because we hold all of the dimensions within us. That is part of the human experience, is that our soul is expressing all over the place in all kinds of expressions, right? Whether they be physical or not. So we have access to all of that within the human expression. When we reach a particular vibration within our own self, right? So when we're allowing more of our soul light into our human experience, our vibration raises. We begin to access higher consciousness within our own expression. That's when doors start to open for us. Like we'll have past life memories come in from both within the human earth experience, but also beyond, right? And for me, I'd had many past life expressions come in with human earth things for years and years and years. And after the Starseed awakening, more remembrance about my lives and expressions beyond the human earth experience started coming in. And that looks a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. For me, I would just be like hanging out doing something, and then all of a sudden this memory would like pour in like a movie in my mind's eye, right? And I would be like, oh, okay, because I was like, well, that's not what I expected to be happening while I was pouring water or whatever, like doing some mundane thing, right? And so, it just all of that, and I received visions and downloads. And, between all of it, I was getting information about all different types of races, even, races that I'm not directly connected to, meaning having a parallel life right now with, just because I asked questions, right? So I'd be like, what's going on with the Greys? Everybody's like giving them a really bad rap right now. What's happening with the Greys? What's the story with the Greys? And then I got, like 2 visions and multiple downloads to fill in the story of the Greys. And that came from my soul team, but filtered through my soul team from the Greys, right? So the way I have everything set up is everything filters through my own soul team. So any being that wants to communicate with me is filtered through my high self-approval and everyone on my soul team who are here to guide and assist me, right? They're doing that anyway with us, but the way you can set it up, anyone can do this, right? You can just ask your soul team to filter any and all connection, contact, communication with any being or non-being, and it's done, right? So you could all do that right now if you wanted to. So then you can rest and trust that anything that happens is coming in for a purpose, right? And especially if you're asking for it, if you're asking for information, maybe it's not in your highest alignment to receive it, then it doesn't have to come through, right? But yeah, so I think where was I? I was talking about the Pleiadians, right? The Pleiadians coming in first. And just channeling a bunch of information. I still, to this day, like I conversationally channel, like when I'm talking to people in groups like this even, a lot of the information that I'm pulling is coming through my own higher knowingness, but it's also being braided in by the beings on my soul team to assist the conversation. I don't always drop in and go, and the Pleiadians are saying this, or the star beings are saying this, right? Because it's just something that I'm habitually used to doing. But I do like to drop in and do automatic writing, channeled writing. It's very nostalgic for me. It's something that I started when I was very young. So every time I do it, the messages are so profound. And I love the surprise of reading it after. So I let it come through. And there was a lot of that happening with the Pleiadians. I consider, and this is not across the board for every starseed, but for me, when I have a direct experience with a particular race that shows me that I am an extension of that lineage, right? I hold frequencies for them, soul codes, so to speak. That's when I consider it an activation. So it doesn't mean that I'm not connected to the Orions. It doesn't mean that I'm not connected to Alcyone or other places, right? It just means that so far in my current timeline, these are the beings who have stepped forward and said, you're holding frequency for us, right? And in this human expression. And I believe that's how we all are. I don't think we're just Pleiadian, we're just Andromedan, we're just Lyran. I think we are this beautiful symphony of frequency within the human expression. And that's just my own knowingness, but also what I receive from my team. I don't know. Did I answer your question, Karen? I think I went all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. You answered the question for sure. As I'm thinking, you said I'm trying to find my spotlight. There I am. You want to normalize this stuff. I feel very passionate about that too, because we have been indoctrinated, conditioned, hypnotized really into thinking that if we're talking about this stuff, we're woo-woo, we're crazy. I mean, all the stuff that I talk about, psychic ability, life after death, there's a lot more normality coming into the life after death story, because there's all the ions and conversations that have been going on for so long, and there's just millions of people talking about their afterlife experiences, and out-of-body experiences. So that's being normalized. And then the next chunk is this conversation, the galactic conversation. Just like I was saying before, look up, there's just literally trillions of life forms out there, and universes, and Earth has been so isolated for so long. It's time to reconnect. But what do you think? So you're someone that sort of looks after the starseeds, the people that have been what we call starseeds. They've been hanging out on different planets, having different experiences, and they've volunteered to come to planet Earth at this time in its evolutionary process. What do you think most of them are here to do? Or what do you think I know what you're here to do, but what do you think we're here to do?
Oh, that's a good question. So we all have unique purposes and missions, right? Based on our soul's journey through expressing, right? So again, we're talking about our multidimensionality, right? You can think of it as like a spiral, right? And we have expressions in all of the dimensions, and multiple expressions within that. I've heard somewhere someone said you only have 15 lives simultaneously, or 25, and I was like, well, am I just a unicorn? Because I'm experiencing myself as having tons of lives, right, simultaneously. And my team's like, no, that's how we do it, right? And I'm like, okay, so I'm not a unicorn, we're good. Though I might be, I don't know, unicorn energy is really good. So I'm sure I've played in that at some point, or what we have labeled unicorn, I should say. So yeah, when it comes to what we're here to do, that's different for different people. And, there's entire worlds out there, entire planets that are almost, if not completely devoid of their inhabitants, because they've incarnated here to assist, because we all received the call. And I just want to preface, purposes and missions, right? But I want to preface it with, you don't come to Earth unless you are a master upon master upon master upon master upon master, with specializations and geniuses and all of these tools in your toolkit. You don't come to Earth if you're a baby, baby fledgling soul that hasn't had very many lives, very many places. This is like a master's program, even though it's not really school, right? But my team used to call it the Earth School to try to get us to understand, right? Back in like the 90s or whatever. But now it's just this place that we come to really, because there's a lot of layers going on with this human experience, right? That most people are not aware of, right? We have our own personal life, but then we have, we're even playing out archetypical expressions and conflicts and different things that have happened in a lot of our galactic lives as well here. And it's because of the way, and Karen, I'll hopefully get back to your question in a minute. I feel like we have to have some preface information. But it's because of the way we created the human experience to be, right? So it's not only are you having unlimited free will to the point that you can hold yourself in bondage and suffering for an entire lifetime if that's what you choose, whether it's an unconscious or conscious choice, right? But we also have, we have the really intense duality, right? Like the really high highs, the really low lows, a lot of contrast. And, we have access to angels, like just on the drop of a dot, a dime or whatever that phrase is. I'm not always good with those phrases. But we have all of these unique things about the human expression. Plus, we get to shift the human expression from within it during this moment in humanity's evolution and consciousness, right? So when we're talking about like purposes and missions, it's all across the board. A lot of us are grid workers. In a previous humanoid expression on Earth, we all know to be Atlantis, we broke Gaia's grid. We broke her dimensional grid, her third dimensional grid. And we kind of greatly injured the fifth dimensional grid. And it has only recently been fully repaired, both of them, right? And there's a connection between all of the grids, and there's multiple grids for different things for each planet and each celestial body. And our blueprints are connected to that, right? So it gets really technical, but we're here now for a lot of different reasons. Some people are just here. Their purpose that they chose for themselves is to be the most amazing parent they could be, to really support the evolution of their child coming into who they know they are, right? Some people are here just to radiate love or light or a particular frequency that they hold within another expression that is needed in this world. And then there are a lot of people who come here with specific things that they want to do to assist in service, right? And these are not the only things. I mean, there's billions of us, right? So you can imagine there are so many different purposes and missions, right? Like I used to say, what's your purpose? And now I'm like, what are your purposes? What are your missions? Because as I've evolved and watched everyone around me evolve and all of my clients, there's layers and layers and layers to it, right? It's just like, being in the ascension, it's a journey. There's no real destination, right? Being here in the human body, we do have, at this moment in time, we have an endpoint, right? We have this is my final exit. I'm out of here, right? And probably for good reason, because this is a very intense place. Can you imagine living, 5,000 years or a billion years as a human on Earth right now? No, right? And lots of our other expressions, we get to experience our infinite nature. And our lifespans, my team always tells me that our lifespans will extend the more we really embody our higher dimensional frequencies and have more of a light body and less density. That our lifespans will extend, but nobody is agreeing to that right now for valid reasons, like this is a really intense place. But Karin, did I answer all your questions?
Always. Always. I was talking to some people last night, or a girl last night, about how bloody old we're all getting. And I agree with you. Our lifespan has already expanded. But, Earth, as humans, like we think 50, 60, 70 is old age. To a galactic person that lives 500 years, it's not even adolescence. Infants, I often think about that. And I said that to somebody last night who's not really into the galactic conversation. And I said, just think about how long ETs live. 57, she was saying just turned 57. 57, so young. And she said, ETs? And I said, yeah, some of them live for like 500 years. So imagine if you lived for 500 years, how young 57 would be. When you think of it in that perspective, you stop sort of taking on the old age story. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a story that we have in our collective. But there's good reason why we live such short lives compared to other places in the cosmos. And just like you said, Bridget, this is a hard school place experience. It's difficult to bump up against the negative emotions that we have access to and to not take them on as an identity of self, because they're just frequencies that we can engage in or not. But when we feel bad and then we blame something outside of us for the reason that we feel bad, now we've identified with that negative emotion where we're saying, this is me, this is happening to me, and we play the victim role. And I think that many other civilizations have moved beyond that, right? They've moved beyond that because they understand we are the creators of our reality, therefore we are the creators of how we think and feel. Therefore, we can navigate anything based on that. But yeah, a lot of us get stuck in that trap and it's difficult and we live lives of suffering. And so, after 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, bang, it's done, So what if they told you about all this stuff? You're a galactic mob. And who do you identify with the most, or you just talk to like a team of people?
So the way we describe it is so people can understand, right? So we talk about the Pleiadians, the Sirians, the Lyrans, the Arcturians, the Andromedans, for me, Auroran, the Auroras, rather. And we really talk about it as if it's one group at a time. And sometimes it is, but really the way I experience it is there's my high self, and I include that higher aspect of soul into my soul team, because what I usually experience is multiple types of beings braiding an energetic frequency in to communicate with me simultaneously. So for them, it depends on who they are and what they're expressing in and what dimensional expression it is. But they don't even view themselves in separation. They are individualized, right? Most of them. I do have some collective consciousness that I communicate with as well, that I'm connected to. But most of them are individualized, but they're not playing in the illusion of separation that we do here on Earth, because we have the illusion of separation and the veils, the illusion of forgetting, right? And they are not playing in that. That's not a part of their collective experience, or even their individual experience, right? So the way I experience them is they come in together. I mean, I might have an angelic being with a Pleiadian, with a dragon, with my high self, all talking to me simultaneously for the same message, right? And braiding frequency, and I often see it as a golden braided frequency. Like if you imagine energy streams, and then imagine them braiding together, right? And creating one cord. That's often what it looks like for me. And sometimes it's a really thin one, and sometimes it's a really big one. It just depends on what information is coming through. I visually see it. Often I will see it with a combination of what I like to call our first eye, even though we call it a third eye here, but our first eye and then our physical eyes, right? So often as a combination with that, but also I see a lot of things in that screen in our mind's eye where we play our memories back, right? And then sometimes I'll see it visually with I think at this point I'm mostly just a combination of first eye and physical eyes, but there are times that I turn it down, or I'm experiencing something that turns down, having such a visit, like a physical, visible, experience, just like anyone else, right? So we all go through things like that. But what was the question again? I lost it. I think it was, Karen, what was it?
I can't remember. You got to remember, I'm multitasking here.
I'm ripping.
I'm looking at all the chat questions and everything.
It's hot in Florida today.
I know you're hot and bothered. Well, let's get into some of the experiences that you've had, because you've had some wild experiences. As your team, I can't remember what the question was. What have they said about humans and short lives? That's right. We're talking about long lives, short lives, how difficult planet Earth is, and why we're here as starseeds, what we're here to do. So I know that you're here, just like you said, to normalize this conversation and open, maybe you've got, like, as you said, you've got purposes, but to make the reality that we're, connected to consciousness all over the cosmos, and that they're here helping the human consciousness evolve. But what are some of the experiences they've given you in your awakening process? Because like any of us, when we don the human experience, we come in under the veil of forgetfulness, and then we have to awaken. Like even walk-ins, I've spoken to so many walk-ins that come in as these higher consciousness beings. They're not born into a baby's body, so they come into a human body, usually to renovate the body, because the body's usually sick as the last soul's left. They've got to renovate the body, but they still have to awaken to who they are. For some that's a long process, for some that's a short process. And I'm sure that your team were like helping you remember who you are. What were the experiences they were giving you?
I mean, it's a lifetime of things. So, and it's funny thinking back to some of the things from when I was much younger. I mean, I was communicating about spiritual things when I was a little kid, right? So I came in with a lot of the forgetting veils lifted, but I still had others that were, that I was experiencing myself as. And my earliest memory I accessed through a session, a hypnosis session, and it was of me as an infant in my bassinet kind of crib thing. And I know I had to be super young, because my mom and my Nana were both in the same house. I could sense them, feel them, know them, see them. I'm a brand new baby in a brand new baby body, basically. And I have 3 angels standing around my bassinet, one to the left of me, and they're all doing different things. So one is talking to me about how strange it feels, and how I'm expressing how restricted I feel, how constricted it feels to have this vast consciousness be connected to such a dense, tiny form. And then we're having conversations like this. Another one is talking to me simultaneously about things that are upcoming in my life that I've planned, and, you know, almost like planting seeds within the human consciousness, right? Because I had a knowingness that though I understood who I was in that moment, fully understanding how expansive I am and all of the different ways that I'm expressing simultaneously and what my quote, quote, history has been, that there would come a moment where that information would be veiled, where the veil of forgetting, the illusion of forgetting would descend, and I would be, you know, relying on a lot of this information. And then the other angel was adjusting something within my physical form that was just not quite right, and healing me essentially, right? And that's my earliest memory, accessing that. Before that, my earliest memory was at like 1.5, right, or 1-ish. I have been utilizing my specializations and mastery since I was a small baby, right? Like one of my very first memories of using a specialization was with my Nana. I was in the grocery store. We were in those old carts that were like really metal and not very comfortable, right? And I'm sitting, and I'm a little tiny toddler, and this man is standing in front of me. And this is, you know, I'm going to age myself, but he was definitely a hippie. And he had a long white beard, and he was wearing kind of a dirty wife beater and some cut off jean shorts. And he was just, you know, smiling at me and looking at me, and he was so happy to see me. And I remember being very straight faced, looking at him, but I wasn't looking at his face so I could see it. I was looking into his energetic system, and I was observing neutrally that he had all of these strange energy things within his energy system that looked like little gray squiggles, like dark charcoal squiggles. And I observed that they did not belong there. And then it was almost like, and I didn't have words in my mind yet, right? I didn't get that until I was about 6 years old. So I was observing through consciousness what he was doing in his body and his energetic system, and very curious about it, but at the same time understanding that it was what it was and there was no judgment about it, right? And then eventually, you know, he's getting more and more animated, trying to make me smile, right? And so eventually I did the baby thing, and I just smiled, and I was like, you know, giggling for him or whatever. But that was the first memory I have of using a specialization to do something, right? Let me clear my throat chakra. I feel like there's a lot going on with the collective right now in the throat area and the lung space. Every time I get on these, I feel like I have to clear. Let me mute for a second.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
When you were a baby, you didn't have the consciousness to, like, you just observed what was in his field. Like, yeah, go on.
I was looking at his light body, him in light body form. So I wasn't, though I could see the layer of the physical, I was actually looking at the light body, and it was filled with a bunch of stuff that I understood wasn't supposed to be there. But, you know, it was like, okay, you know, there was no judgment. It was just an observation, right? It wasn't like, oh, this guy, he's got a lot of stuff, like I would think now, right? Like, you know, I would think that about myself if I looked at, whoa, I'm loaded with stuff, I need to do a clearing, right? It was nothing like that. It was just very neutral observation. You know, I was communicating with angels from a very, very tiny age, right? And talking to them, and raised by my grandparents for most of my childhood, you know, until I was about almost 6. So they were very accepting of everything. Like they would, I thought everyone was like me based on how they responded. I didn't know that this was unusual until my best friend told me about a year or two. Don't get me on the times. I'm not always with the 3D timeline thing, but about a year or two after my parents got custody of me, my best friend, in passing, we were little kids, you know, tells me normal people don't do that. And she wasn't being mean, because I was trying to explain something to her, and usually she too could understand. But she was like, no, we don't do that. And then I went home and cried for like a whole day, because I realized that I was not normal, whatever that means, right? But, you know, I think with all of these experiences, like, we each have experiences that are tailored to our own individual consciousness expansion and awakening, right? So my experiences, though they seem really intense for some people that are listening to them, are like big, right? Larger than life. For me, they weren't, but it was based on my entire blueprint for this human expression and all of the things that were to come, and being able to share these stories with people that, you know, you guys, a lot of people use it as permission slips for your own experiences, whatever that may look like for you. But the what's the word? Not vivacious. What's the other word that means like larger than life? The larger than life experiences that I have aren't any more amazing or better than something that is more simple, right? Because we all have and receive whatever is divine for us in that moment. And for me, with my blueprint, I have a lot of rebelliousness. I have a lot of what I like to call independent. You know, I'm a bit stubborn, a bit hard-headed about certain things. I'd like to do what I want, you know, kind of thing, right? So some of my experiences need to be big and in my face for me to be like, oh, okay, it's time to shift, or it's time to expand, or whatever, right? And not everyone needs that, right? But also these stories being shared right now hold all of the codes, keys, frequency, wisdom, and knowledge that I've really anchored into this human expression throughout my entire lifetime. So as you're listening to them, you're receiving that. And whatever you're resonant with, you know, you're receiving that as well. And it would be the same if I were listening to you and your stories, right? So yeah, I don't know. There's so many though, Karin. I mean, I remember the first time the angels taught me about the golden energy, like, you know, teaching me about the huge ball above my head and letting the bottom open, and this golden, like, looked like liquid gold energy just flowing into me and around me, and telling me that's an easy way to connect energetically with them. And I mean, there's just been, you know, story after story, experience after experience, and some of them were like crack me open, like, you know, I'm in tears because it was just my entire reality just shifted in an instant, right? And I went into, you know, cognitive dissonance moments where I'm like, I had this one realization that maybe to another person wouldn't have been that profound, but for me, it like ripped away all of this structure that had been within my consciousness, right? And then immediately having things start to rearrange so that I can, you know, shift and expand and allow the new to come in, right? I was raised Baptist, so I had a lot of programming, right? Though it had a lot of structure, in a very beautiful way, there was a lot of human programming that came with it, right? And so I would have moments where in my teens where something would happen in my experience and it would be so far out of my realm of understanding that it would just crack me open. That's the best way to describe it. It was just like, you know, and then everything would fall away that wasn't resonant. And then I would have this moment of, okay, I have to let things rebalance. The first time I didn't know what to do, but after the first time you kind of get like, okay, I know this will eventually resolve itself, right? But yeah, and then star beings didn't come until later in life. Like I said earlier, I think you know, I watched Ancient Aliens for the the archaeological stuff. I mean, if that tells you anything. Like, I believed, of course, there were other lives out there and other beings and all of that. I was not a naysayer at all. If anyone asked me, I was like, well, of course this is an enormous universe. Of course there's other life, right? And I believed in it, but it was the furthest thing from my conscious reality. And even getting on Clubhouse a year and a half ago, I had no idea that I was going to be talking so much about normalizing these conversations. And it was like the first 2 rooms on Clubhouse, I was like, oh, this is where we're going. So my high strangeness got even more high strange, right? And I'm like, you know, this is who we are. So the more experiences I have, the more normal it is for me. And I'm a very, you know, grounded person who plays in very, you know, etheric realms, right? So I using my AirPod. Karin, can you say something for me?
Yep. Yeah, your sound has changed a bit. You know, talking about
hear you. Hold on one second.
You can't hear me? Oh, you lost it. You lost me. This throat thing that you're talking about, it's interesting that you're talking about it too, because I've been experiencing that as well, feeling like which you can't hear me, but for people that can. Can you hear me? Did it drop out? Did it? She can't hear me.
I'm sorry, you guys. Give me just 1 second.
The beauties of going live. Can you hear me now, Bridget? Can you hear me? No.
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Well, I'll just keep yakking while we're getting with the cats crawling all over me as usual. Yeah.
There we go. I think can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Talking about communication. Yes, exactly, Fiona. Can you hear?
Testing.
Can you hear? Can you hear us? Don't you love this? So here I am going to talk about communication, and we've lost communication. But I think that, you know, there has been a lot of conversations happening, and Neil from Portal to Ascension and Joan of Angels and Sheila from the Galactic. Look, there are just, you know, look, there's just so many people like prolifically putting this communication out there into the world. And a lot of people are talking about it. And I think classically, we have been under a collective thought form that says it's not okay to talk about this stuff. And that thought form says it's not okay to talk about it because you'll be ostracized, you'll be ridiculed, people won't understand you, and you'll be shunned. You know, you'll be like, your family won't want to talk to you, your friends won't want to talk to you. And this is like the thought form that we've all been under, that if I speak my truth, or if I speak what I know to be true in my heart, that people won't understand me and I won't be included. And I think that the communication is ramping up so much now, even inside the collective. You know, there is all this information out there about UAPs and UFOs, and it's really starting to ramp up. But we're all hitting that thought form that says, if I speak about this stuff, I'm going to be ridiculed or I won't be included. Can you hear us now, Bridget?
I can.
Oh,
can
there you
hear
go.
Me?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
I couldn't hear a word you just said, and I was like, I want to hear what you're saying.
Well, I was just talking about, you know, the throat chakra. I think that we're really sort of repairing the collective thought form that says that it's not okay to express my truth in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of people's truth is this conversation, where, but they feel like if they express it in their family or in their friends or in their peer groups, they're going to be ostracized or shunned, or, you know, people won't talk to them. Like, that is the big fear, that will people still like me if I talk about my truth? And this is really, this energy is really up for repair right now. That I think that it's been a bit of a, what's the word? A psyop, really. It's been a collective thought form that's been perpetuated through the masses, through the collective unconscious, that it's not okay to talk about this sort of stuff, your truth. But there's so many conversations going on, so many conferences and stuff. It's really ramped up, especially over the last few years. I think about communication also as the message coming in. I feel the throat is also connected to listening. So also some are speaking up now. Also many more are ready to listen or becoming ready to listen. Yeah, Kristen, exactly.
Beautiful, Kristen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
So what do you want to say about that, about speaking your truth? Like, so you went on Clubhouse, what, 2 years ago? Was it only 2 years ago?
It was April of last year. So we've had a year. We've had a year and some months, right?
Okay, so quite recently. So Clubhouse is an app where people have conversations a bit like Zoom, but without the camera.
Yeah, it's a drop-in audio-only app. So you don't have to fluff to come on. You can just come on and do whatever you want to do. You can sit and listen, or you can join in the conversation however you want to play it, right? Yeah, honestly, I have been I learned really early that when I was hiding aspects of myself, other people could feel it. And that affected my relationships with people. And I feel this across the board for most people. When we're hiding a part of ourselves because we are worried about what the people we love will think and feel, they can feel it. We can feel it in them when they're doing it. If we put our mind to it, we'll be like, oh, yep, they're hiding something from me. So I've been pretty out and proud and loud about my spirituality, about communicating with, you know, all kinds of beings, leading to my starseed awakening as an adult, right? And then this was just another layer of high strains to add to the mix, to be real honest. But I feel like we are in this period where we are right now is monumental. This is a monumental period of humanity's evolution that we're in. In the timeline that we are in right now, the overall like human timeline, talking about from the inception to where we are now in a place where speaking our truth and being who we came here to be is what we're here to do, right? And we are shifting what it means to have a human experience going forward. So we are quite literally changing the human experience from within it for what generations will have after this moment, right? After this life. And we're in the beginning stages of that. And we are, what humanity has labeled the ascension. We're here to experience ourselves as a collective and individuals, return to the dimensional expression that we have dropped down from. So we're on the upswing back to where we were originally created, which my team says is a fifth dimensional expression. I have heard other people say seventh and eighth, but my team is very certain about it being a fifth dimensional expression, but that we will choose to go up in dimensional expression from there, right? So it's like a returning to home. When we were in Lemurian Atlantis on Earth, still with Terra, right, with Gaia, we were in a fifth dimensional expression, and then we dropped down during the fall of Atlantis and continued to drop to the lowest of the third dimensional expression so that we could experience it, because that's what everything is. Everything is expression and experience, right? As for throat chakras and speaking our truth, it is really about internal integrity and honesty with ourselves, and allowing everyone else's opinion and judgment to be about them. When I have a judgment about you, about anyone, about myself, it's not about anyone else. That judgment is about me and my frequencies and what I'm holding within my consciousness. And the same goes for any one of you, right? So when you're judging something or someone, that says nothing about what you're judging. It says everything about you and who you are and what you're choosing in each now moment. Even if that something is something that is horrific, right? So even a judgment in that moment is speaking to us about our own belief system and our programming and our stories that solidify the beliefs in our reality. The programming could be unconscious or conscious, right? It talks to us about our slumbering aspects of consciousness as well as those that are awakened. So really everything that happens in our reality that we are a part of is reflecting something back to us about ourselves. And that's how I firmly believe about all of this. This is what I experience as truth, that everything within my inner world is being directly reflected into my external reality. It's like a mirror coming back to me all the time. And when we realize that we're here to do something in particular, we're not outing ourselves if it's not part of our purpose for being here, right? You won't even have that inclination if it's not even part of your purpose for being here. But if standing in your truth of who you are as a multidimensional being and understanding your galactic nature and your universal and your multi-universal and your cosmic nature, because it's so much more than just what we think, right? If that is a part of your remembrance and your realization and what you feel passionate toward or even curious, then you will have a moment in your life 9 times out of 10 that will have you step out into a way that the people around you are able to receive that information flowing through you, right? So if we're hiding, we can't do that, right? If we're hiding, we're not actively emanating those codes, keys, and frequency. But that's how I see it, and that's what's happened with me, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I coined this on board the Pleiadian mothership. So you've been taken to places like that where you've re-experienced your galactic family and what they're doing. Do you want to share a bit of those stories? Like when you were taken up on ships and, throughout the cosmos, you were taken in your astral body?
No, well, so I've been consciousness traveling. My soul team started taking me on consciousness traveling journeys when I was a teenager. And this looks like similar to astral projection, but you don't need the astral shell or the silvery white cord. It's just your consciousness is able to travel. And really, we talk about it and experience it like it's going out, right? But really, this is an inner journey that's happening. But it doesn't make sense in a linear brain to talk about going within to other planets, right? So we talk about it as if it's going out. But yeah, they just, whenever I would go into a particular degree of trance, and of course it was safe, they would just pop me out. And usually they were answering questions that I had. I feel like I was born with a question in my mouth. So I have a lot of questions, and I'm always hitting them up for information, like, what about this? And what about this? And tell me more about this. And so sometimes they will let the questions stack up, and then they'll take me out into what looks like space, and they create a scene energetically in front of me to describe things. Or, you know, basically it feels like we're shooting across space to a particular planet to help me have an experience there. So I've been traveling to worlds and other dimensional expressions, because not everything is a body, right? Not everything is a body. There's a lot of dimensional expressions, but I've been doing that traveling via my consciousness form, which is it's similar to your light body. It is your light body, but doesn't always hold the light, right? You're not always seeing the light. So for me, it feels like an impression of my body most of the time, but there's no density to it, right? And my body is still fine. I'm still able to sense, see, feel, know, peer in at it if I want to, and return to it at will with intention. And they've been traveling me all over, right? So before I had my Starseed awakening, I would always see dragons, like big cosmic dragons that are like in space, and then other dragons, various kinds all over planets and stuff. And that's before I really understood that I had a very strong connection with dragon energy. But yeah, it was always dragons, and I would always think, these planets are all, you know, nobody's in any of the planets, right? There's like, and I would see like fairies and things like that were in my wheelhouse. Like there are certain planets that are fae related. They're not necessarily, they're more like elves with wings. I don't know, they're tall. But I would also I've seen little ones. I've seen all kinds of things out in the consciousness traveling journeys over the years. But it wasn't until my Starseed awakening that when I went to these planets again, like some of them I revisit, right? That I'm like, oh, there's like a lot of people here, right? And they may not be people as we would think of as human people, human Earth people, but there are humans all over our universe, right? And going to the ship was interesting, because it's not like I was it's not like I was taken to a ship. So what I did, my dreams went dark. There were no dreams. I was a prolific dreamer and could always remember all of my dreams. And they went dark for a while. Like nothing was there in the morning for me to remember. And I was like feeling frustrated and also curious. And I mess around with my energetic technology sometimes. So at first I thought that's what it was, and it wasn't. My team checked me out. Everything was fine. And I was like, okay, they're not telling me what's happening. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So in a moment of like intense declaration, it wasn't a gentle one, I went to bed and I was like, I want to know what the bleep I'm doing during dreams time. I want to know what it is tonight. And I woke up on a ship as soon as I went to sleep. Got a little cat here, sorry you guys. And so I woke up on a ship in the consciousness of what I know now to be a parallel aspect of my soul. She is Pleiadian, and she was driving, and I was just the passenger. And many trips to the ship, oftentimes I'm in her consciousness, sometimes I'm not, sometimes I just pop into the ship itself. And it's not as if anyone has to take me there, though when my councils have meetings, because I do have multiple Pleiadian councils and councils of light that I'm a part of, and we all have so many councils that we're a part of. But when they call me, they'll pull me out of dreams time, right? So if I'm traveling, flitting about somewhere in another dimension, just having fun, they'll pull me right into the ship. And it doesn't feel weird or bad or anything. It's just like I'm doing this thing, and then poof, now I'm in the ship, right? And they'll bring me in for meetings and checkups and different things like that. We all are doing a lot of communication with our star families, mainly during dreams time, often during meditation. You'll be aware of this. For most people, if you're not, when you hold a particular degree of consciousness, expanded consciousness within your human form, you can start to remember these things. Now, it's not always the case. Last night, I know I had meetings with councils. I asked for it, and I woke up feeling amazing, just like I always do after I've been around so many light beings, and I didn't remember a word that was said, right? But, you know, I recognize the imprint of the energy and the frequency, right? So yeah.
So how do you think we can remember more? How do you think we can remember? Intention. Yeah.
And declaration and expanding your consciousness. So there's some things I don't want to know. And that's an agreement I've made with my high self and my star families. Like if it's boring, monotonous, mundane, and isn't going to add value to this human experience in some way for me or others, I don't want to know. I mean, if it is time for me to remember those things, then yes, right? Like if I'm expanding to a degree that, you know, this is just a normal part of life and it's to remember the mundane and the super, super exciting fun stuff at the same time, then yes. So I'm not limiting myself, but right now I want to know the things that add value, right? That are pertinent for the life that I'm living or the lives that I'm going to help others, you know, express in, right? So what can I be of service with? What is fun? Because I like a lot of fun. You know that about me. I'm all about the fun and the joy. I'm pretty serious too, which is funny, but my Pleiadians will step in a quick second and say, "Have you had any fun today?" And I'm like, no.
And I think that what you're talking about is a directive of the higher self, really. I think that the reason that we don't remember a lot of stuff is that it's not pertinent to the physical human life we're living. And and when we remember what is pertinent, because I've had amazing memories and then I've had no memory at all. Like, so why can I remember some things and not others? And why do I remember these crazy dreams and not all of them? And I think that the higher self is dictating what comes through the veil and what doesn't, pertinent to the focus and expression that you're living in this earth dimension and this human expression. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. And what you need to know right here, right now. You know, talking about angels, you're saying the angels, who was I talking to? I can't remember, but I was asking about angels and galactic expressions, and they were saying actually the angelic realm was specifically created for denser expressions, for like the earth expression, because once you've enlightened yourself, you don't really need that angelic help. But here we are under the veil of forgetfulness and with this you know, bandwidth of negative or the bandwidth of emotional expression available to us, and we need help. And so there are literally legions of angels that are here assisting humanity, whereas other planets, not so much. Once you've moved to a fifth dimensional understanding, you don't really need that angelic help. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, my team is saying that there are other planets that have direct angelic assignments, so to speak. Like, each and every one of us have at least one angel, and I'm loving your kitty. Is that Shirley? I think I'm saying the right name. Okay, Shirley, I love you, kitty. So, yeah, we each have at least one. Generally, most people have 3 angels that they're connected to at all times, right? So you have what people think of as the guardian angel, right? But then you have others. And then at any given moment, you can be working with a ton of different angels simultaneously, right? Like if you're working on your spiritual development, Uriel will come in, right? Like clockwork, right? And, you know, they each have different things that they do with us, you know, and I like to think of them like people, I think that there's one Michael, there's one Gabriel, there's one, it's a frequency, right? So it's a name for a particular frequency shared by many angelic beings. So, but the trick about this, the way that I understand it, is that they are in oneness, right? So they are extensions of source that are, they don't experience themselves in the same sort of free will experience that we do. But I always I'm a stickler for, like, a lot of people are like, you can command angels to do whatever. Why do we want to, when we're in oneness and unity, you don't have to command anything. You just make a request and they're going to do it, right? They don't have to be at our beck and call just because their free will setup is different than ours, right? And that may just be part of my human coming through, but, you know, there are a lot of Michael, right? So but they understand what each of them is doing, right? So there could be a Michael with someone on the other side of the world and a Michael here. There's really just a 0 point, right? We're all in a 0 point together. But to explain it in a linear way, you know, we're reaching the frequency band that is the Michael energy for the energetics, right? That we're requesting, right? And that's how it works. I wish we had Stephanie Lodge here with us right now, one of my sisters. She would be able to explain all of this so much. She's known as the Hug Angel, and she's amazing. But Karin, if you haven't interviewed her, I'm happy to connect you guys. But she can really get really deep into the angel stream, and she does all of that angel streaming, which is amazing. And she's starseeded too. She's got an Andromedan connection and Pleiadian as well. But so
I love that.
yeah, so when it comes to angels, like we all have them, but we all have star family, we all have elemental connections, we all have, like, if we're looking at some of the things that my team has told me over my lifetime, right? So when I was younger, I was asking specific questions, and the answer was, Earth is in a newer, I'll use the word new with quotes, right? Earth is in one of the newly created parts of this universe, right? And in a newer galaxy. And we are infinite creator beings, right? They've been telling me that for like very long time. Different languaging, but infinite creator beings, right? So if we're infinite and we're having an expression on Earth, or many, right, that are happening simultaneously, that's another timey-wimey thing that'll get your brains tweaked out sometimes thinking about all of that. But if we're having that here, newer, we're infinite, this is the Earth expression, right? Then odds are we have existed so many other places simultaneously, and are simultaneously, right? We also have expressions that we've completed, right? And the way I understand us, in my last hypnosis session that I received, I asked some big questions, like, what's my connection to the dragons? What's my connection to Andromeda Galaxy? And my high self loves to like expand me by throwing a lot of things all at me all at once, right? So I'm seeing thousands and thousands and thousands of lives happening simultaneously. And I'm like, oh, and including like, essentially creating a soul essence so that I could begin expressing in this universe. And we had completed another universal expression before we came here. And, this universe was being created. We're all deciding in the creator consciousness, right? So thinking of like sub-architects of creation, right? So like the fourth expression of source, however you want to look at it, right? So we're planning the universal creation with many others, but in oneness, right? And a solar system is created, a tiny one. It was really little. It was just like a handful of planets and a sun, right? And we're popping in and out of form, creating a form to go within the actual planet that we were focused on, so that we could change the frequencies from within it. Does this sound familiar to what we're doing right now, you guys? And then we're popping out because we didn't have to, there was no assignment to how long we had to be in, right? So we would pop back out into our expansive creator form, which is like way beyond a light body, right? We're connected to all, we're experiencing ourselves as isness and all simultaneously. And we're, adjusting the energetics, that kind of a thing. And then we're popping back in a different form, trying out different forms and adding codes and keys and frequencies to the blueprint from within it. And we did this for a very long time before we actually landed on a particular form. And it was not as dense as what we have here on Earth. Then we proceeded to, some of us stayed into form for a while, and then we evolved the form a few more times. And some of our consciousness stayed out in what we would consider like higher guide, master guide territory, right? And we began to, advance within this particular expression. And then we went out and continued through generations. And sometimes our lives were very, very long. And sometimes we would choose shorter lives. All of them were longer than what we have here on Earth. But we went out, and as things were being created, we began to populate and create more life and do different things. And we spanned out into, the rest of the universe as it was being created. And what I know this to be as is Andromeda Galaxy, right? So we started a lot like the Lyran experience. The Lyran experience, per my memory, the consciousness that was Lyran also came from another completed universal experience. And they were invited to be a part of this universal experience, and they chose a particular planet in a solar system and began to adjust the energetics of it. They also chose a life form that was already pre-existing to adjust and co-create with, right, to create the form that they would eventually be in, and continue to expand and express and things like that. And a lot of people call that the root of human history, right? Now the original Lyrans were feline, right? So that was the closest form in creation that was similar to what they had expressed in energetically. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what they looked like in the other universe, right? A lot of people don't think about that, right? But energetically, frequency-wise, it was a closer map to the blueprint that they would be expressing through within this universe. And with that particular lions and what we would think of as beings like that, right, big cats, there was a co-creation, and they began to evolve and shift and change so that they could fully embody in those encoded frequencies, so to speak, right? And I don't even remember what the question was. I think I just went way deep.
You did. And I'm thinking about what you're saying. I took my girlfriend, there's a new high rise, there's a new part of Sydney, which is called Barangaroo, which used to be just sort of dockland, and they've built it up and put this casino on it. Anyway, I took my girlfriend there recently, and in so many places, temples, and you see a lion at the beginning, right? A lion. So what you're talking about, the Lyrans and the lioness beings and everything, is depicted throughout history in our architecture. And it's always got the paw on the globe with the flower of life, the sacred. So that in itself is really depicting what you're talking about, like this universe was seeded by these lion beings, and we've talked about the lion as the king of the jungle. Like we revere that sort of lion energy, don't we? It's really interesting, I think, that it's kind of in our culture to talk about this sort of lion energy, and now we're all looking at cat videos on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. It's like we're obsessed with the cats, even if we don't have a cat.
I mean, I'm a big fan of kitties, and I've got two, so I'm a big fan of them. And I have a Lyran parallel. She came through in my first hypnosis session that I received as well, right? And taught me about communicating with parallel aspects of our soul and all of those different things, right? So, yeah, I mean, the whole idea of all of this isn't just to talk about some really awesome, amazing stories that are fun to listen to and imagine, right? It's all about, giving ourselves permission to expand the little bubble and box that we've put ourselves in collectively, right? So being able to stretch the limits of what we've believed for generations, right? We'll just say generations, and stretch beyond those, the capacity that we've been taught we have, and expand into what we really are and who we really are on all levels, is an infinite creator being who is having a human experience while simultaneously having a lot of other experiences and expressions. Our soul is multidimensional. Our soul is actually beyond multidimensional. But so these stories are really to anchor into the human expression that we're living right now, right? So how do I integrate that, right? Like when I have an experience, there's a moment of integration, right? I mean, these things are, the first time I had the contact experiences, the first one, I was excited, right? I was like, oh, what is happening, right? But the second one, a bunch of fear came up. It was really, really intense, right? And that poor little being didn't do anything wrong. But it was just how the programming, came to the surface for me, right? But, there was a long period of integration, even while I was still having more experiences, right? Like meditating and having, the experience of just wanting a quiet meditation, not traveling. Just my intention was having, the stillness of who I am as a soul, and experiencing myself with it. And then having, a bird person from like what felt like super far away, like a really high dimension, like projecting things into my consciousness, right? Which I now know to be avians, but this one was a white one and not a blue one. And, giving me messages that are like, they feel like they're their codes for my entire soul. You know what I mean? Like super strange stuff was happening, right? And I'm like, what do I do with all of this, right? So as they come in, there's always this period of integration, right? There's this period of letting things be what they are, not judging them. And if I am having a moment of judgment, like there were moments where in my life where I'm like, this can't be real. This cannot be really happening, right? My brain would do that because that's natural for humans. And I would be like, but it's happening. So let's just let it be what it is, right? And let's see what comes from this, right? I'm kind of adventurous, so that does help in these situations. But, you know, just letting it come in. And there's a difference, there's a really distinct difference between having a fractured psyche and having multidimensional experiences. There's no part of my consciousness that is broken, right? There's no part of my consciousness that is feeling itself not in alignment with anything else, right? So everything is in harmony within my mental and emotional field, right? Which is why I think being so grounded in the ways that I am, I think that is part of what helps this to be so beneficial for other people who are wanting to expand into who they are, right? But, you know, there are people that'll be like, well, how do you know when you're hearing a voice in your head, how do you know it's not that you're just crazy? Well, because it's not my voice, it's not my energy, you know, there's a difference, right?
Well, that's a great segue, because I'm going to stop the live now and I want to get into the Q&A. So that's because I'm sure that lots of people have questions that are on Zoom. And that's a great question. Like, how do you know that, you know, what I'm imagining is not just my crazy imagination and is something worth listening to? I think that's an excellent question to answer. And so we'll continue this conversation, but I'm going to say goodbye to everyone that's been on the live. There's been only a few. I'm looking on FB and nobody is watching on my profile page. Something's going on there. That's so weird, because there's usually lots of people tune in on but that's really weird. Yeah, anyway, that's another story that I won't talk about. But there's lots of people on YouTube. So thanks everybody that's been listening to the live. And if you want to come on and ask questions, just go to my website, karenswain.com/inner sanctum, pop your email in there and I'll send you out the Zoom link if you want to come on and ask questions to myself and the guests that I have in the Inner Sanctum. And if you want to contact Bridget, where do they find you? They find you on Instagram and Clubhouse and, of course, your website.
Yeah, so my website is BridgetReneeHolliday.com, and that's the word bridge with one T, Renee with 3 E's, and then Holiday actually has 2 L's. You can find me there, but you can also find me on Clubhouse in a club called Awake and Ascending. So all you need to do is search the club. You can find us, join the club, follow us, however you want to do it. The app is really easy to use. It's not complex at all. And then on Instagram, I'm Bridget Renee Holliday as well. I think there's a period between each of them because you can't, it would be one long word without it. But I think that's Facebook too. I'm not on Facebook very often. I just roll things over to it. So definitely recommend coming to Insta. I spend a lot of time in the stories on Insta and on Clubhouse and YouTube. Yeah, YouTube, I'm Expansion Catalyst or Bridget Renee Holliday. You can find me either way.
I love that, Expansion Catalyst. Fantastic. All right. Bye to everyone that's streaming, and we'll continue this conversation.